Spoilers. My name is Carrie and this is Spines and Spoilers. So there has been a very slight dip in my productivity as of late, at least on this channel. That is because we have been moving. As you can see, I have my bookshelf back. I don't have a situation yet where I can set up my camera to film as of yet. So we're just back to handheld for a little while. I will figure something out so that I don't have to do this every single time because it is exhausting. And also because it just doesn't look good to have shaky cam every single time and to not be able to have consistent forms of filming. But anyway, yes, hello. Today we are talking about my October reading wrap-up. I would show you my new place, but it was actually just broken into and a couple of things were stolen. The most expensive things that we had, which were gifts. So that's cool and fun. I just don't trust anyone with my life anymore, basically. And I'm doing this to try and distract myself a little bit. But yeah, let's talk about the books that I read in October. I usually open up these videos with what I am reading and what I am drinking, but I'm actually not reading anything at all right now. I got to the end of October and kind of just plateaued. We're halfway through November. I haven't read a single thing. I've been focusing more on getting the place settled for the most part, setting up my bookshelf. I went and saw my boyfriend and my long distance boyfriend for about a week, which was really nice. I got to spend time with him and his kids. And yeah, otherwise, I haven't been able to do a lot of reading. That being said, here are the 9 books that I read in October. The first book that I read was What Have You Done by Shari Lapena. I was very interested to see how this would turn out because this was her newest book. And I feel like I was kind of lukewarm about the other book that I've read by her. It was one of those books where it was like fine, leaning towards good. And this one was sort of the same. I did enjoy reading it, but it's not something that I'm going to go out of my way to recommend necessarily. It's good, but it's also predictable. Not bad. It's fine, leaning towards good. Like if it had a couple of nudges, it would be good. I would give you the plot, but it's kind of just a whodunit. A girl turns up dead, and they have to figure out who did it. The boyfriend, of course, is the primary suspect, and then there are other ones throughout the town. It turns out there are a lot of people who could have done it, and yeah, I'm not going to give away the ending or anything like that, but it ended up being pretty predictable. I figured it out the moment that the character was introduced. It was like, yeah, that person did it. There's no way that they didn't. And it does the thing at the ending where they try to make you think that it's resolved, and it's not. That's the most I'm gonna say. But yeah, it's fine. Could have been good if it had taken a couple more chances. The next book that I read was The Night We Lost Him by Laura Dave. I had to look up this book's plot because I honestly forgot completely about what this book was about. I forgot completely that I read this book, basically, which should tell you something. It was another instance where it was fine. Not as predictable, actually, as What Have You Done, but there wasn't anything that made it stick out in my mind. Sometimes it went on a little too long. There was, I don't know how to explain it. But it's another situation where someone dies. It's under suspicious circumstances. They think that he killed himself. It is the father of a girl and her brother. Of course, that's how it works. But yeah, they've been estranged and they come together to try and solve the death of their father to see if it was actually a suicide or if it was murder. Of course it was murder. It's always murder. If I remember correctly. Like I said, don't remember a lot about this book. I think it ended up being murder, though, if I remember correctly. Not going to give away anything else, because I can't. The next book was Celestial Monsters by Aiden Thomas. I'm not going to lie, I liked this better than The Sunbearer Trials, which was the first book in this duology? Trilogy series. I'm not sure which yet. Sorry about that. I had to pause because there were noises outside. But yeah, it basically circulates around Mexican mythology and gods. The main character is named Tio. He's a demigod of sorts. It was such a fun book. It's basically about the consequences of actions that were taken at the end of the first book, which I can't really go into because that would spoil the ending of the first book. But yeah, I absolutely loved this. It had so many components that I love. It was interesting from start to finish. I love Aiden Thomas anyway, don't get me wrong, and I love supporting them because they're not non-binary. But this was genuinely a fun book, and I liked it way better than the Sunbearer Trials. And you should maybe, like, I'm not saying don't read the Sunbearer Trials, but I think you could read this without reading the first one, maybe. The next book that I read was Among the Bros by Max Marshall. It was a true crime autobiography, kind of, about a guy's experience in a frat that turned out to have a lot of stuff going on, and the toxic environment that he was enmeshed in. Since then, the fraternity has been shut down, thankfully, because there was a lot of sketchy shit going on. But yeah, that was an interesting read. It's the second kind of autobiographical book that I've read this year where I was like, this would make a really good movie, and I bet they could make it into a horror film of sorts. That being said, there are actual real people involved, so probably not a great idea unless they can actually be involved in the process. But it was extremely interesting, even if it did drag in some places, but it all ended up being relevant ultimately. The next book that I read was Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. This is another book where the ending was sort of predictable. It's about 3 kids looking through their parents' house. Their father ran away when they were younger, and their mother just died. So they're going through the belongings. They find a tape, and there is a dead body on the tape, as well as audio footage of their parents arguing, I believe it is. So, yeah, they have to figure out the mystery of who this person was and what happened exactly. Are their parents murderers? We'll see. This was pretty good, but ultimately a little bit of a letdown because it was pretty predictable. Like, it was another one of those situations where I guessed who the killer was within the first couple of chapters. Like, the character was introduced and I was like, oh. So they did it. I've seen this ending before. That being said, if I hadn't read so many thrillers and mysteries and horrors and stuff like that, I don't know if I would have guessed in this situation, but who knows. Ultimately, pretty good, especially if you haven't read a lot of thrillers, I guess. Definitely overhyped, I will say that, but still good. The next book was Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. Whew. So this one was interesting. It did take some risks, and it got into some like magical realism and some surrealist territory that I was not expecting at all. Like, I didn't see it coming. It was interesting, and I ultimately did enjoy it, but it did kind of jump the shark and go off the rails a little bit. So be prepared for that. It is not the story that it seems to be initially. Yeah, there's more to it. It is definitely not something that I would recommend to everyone. But yeah, it's at least worth dabbling in, and I do like that they took some risks. The 7th book that I read in October was She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. This one was about a full-time nurse who is also a single mom. A person comes into the ICU who is in a coma. I won't say she doesn't remember anything. She's in a coma though. But the nurse starts kind of digging into her past and unlocking a lot of things, a lot of nefarious things. And I won't give away too much because there is a big twist. I thought it was interesting that they did go that way. It was one where I predicted what happened early on, but I wanted to see if that was where they were going to go and what they were going to do with it. And I did enjoy it. I'm not going to say it was the best thing I've ever read. I think I'm getting to the point where maybe I'm burnt out on thrillers again. I don't know, and that could be why I'm not reading a lot in November. But yeah, it was pretty good. I liked that, again, they took some risks, not too far outside the norm necessarily, which is a little disappointing, but still good. It's Mary Kubica. You know what you're getting into. The next book that I read in October was You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. And this is about a woman who checks into an Airbnb in the middle of nowhere. And she starts suspecting that there's maybe something more going on with the person who's renting out the Airbnb. He seems like this very chill, good old boy without the racism and bigotry in general. But yeah, she thinks there might be more to it because people have gone missing lately, and she heard a scream during the night. I'm not gonna lie, I was skeptical about this at first because I thought it was gonna be samey. I was hoping from the beginning that it would take the turn that it ended up taking, and I was so happy. It was outside the norm, it resolved beautifully, and there's room for a sequel. Technically, I guess it could be a really interesting sequel in an entirely different series that we haven't really read yet, at least not from this perspective. But yeah, this is one where it was worth the hype. It's not the best thing I've ever read, but it was definitely worth the hype as far as thrillers go. Sorry for the increased shaking. My arm is getting tired. But that's okay because this is the last book. The 9th and final book that I read in October was They're Watching You by Chelsea Acaso. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. It is about basically an underground society at a college. Big surprise. Dark academia, essentially. A girl's friend has gone missing after she joined a secret society of sorts, which is supposed to just be about games. Turns out there's a lot more to it than that, and more than one person has gone missing. Now, I both did predict part of this one and didn't predict the rest of it. That the rest of it kind of came out of, it came out of nowhere. Not something I'm complaining about necessarily. I do think a few more risks could have been taken, and I would have loved to have known more about this secret society and seen more about how they induct people into it. I thought it's weird, but in this case, I thought that it rushed a little bit, just a little bit. Like, there could have been at least like one more chapter of them fleshing out the society and ramping up the stakes a little bit. And that is it, basically, for my reading month of October. Nothing particularly bad, nothing that I would dissuade anyone from reading necessarily. No 5 stars, I don't think. Maybe Celestial Monsters. It's pretty close. It's at least a 4.5. It is close because I loved that book. Absolutely loved it. I think I'm going to see how it ages and reread it and then see how I feel about it then, because there are some that I've given 4.5, then I go back later and discover, no, this is definitely a 5-star. I was being far too frugal with my stars. Or I'll go back and read a 5-star and be like, no, this is like a 3.5. What was I thinking? It had to have been like a recency bias or something like that. Anyway, I am prattling because my nerves are shot from moving and this break-in and just like, yeah, a lot of things. This is such an outlet sometimes. But I hope you guys are staying safe out there, that you had a fun Halloween, and that you enjoy the holidays with whatever holidays you actually celebrate. I'm hoping that I will definitely have more material coming out, but right now I have 2 vlogs to edit because I thought that I had put out my September vlog and I did not. So now I have a September and October vlog, and they take so much time to edit. September vlog may just end up disappearing. We'll have to see, or maybe I'll combine them. I don't know. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it way more than you know. Like, I cannot express my appreciation. I don't know why you're here. How did you get here? Sorry, that was aggressive. I don't know how you ended up here, but I'm glad you are. Yeah, stay safe out there. Stay warm if you're in a cold area. I am not. It is still like 80 degrees outside. If you want to like and share and subscribe and all that jazz, please feel free to do so. I'm not going to twist your arm about it. What is important, though, especially now, after recent events, what is most important is that you remember to love yourself. I am going to add to keep yourself safe. These next 4 years are going to be a hell of a time. At least 4 years. Sorry, I had to take a moment. It is definitely a scary time to be alive, especially if you are someone who is from a marginalized group, or even if you're not, if you're just not, you know, a straight, cis, rich, white man. Whether you realize it or not, shit's brewing. Stuff's about to go down. It is terrifying to be alive right now. And I hope that you are all taking precautions, whatever precautions you can, staying safe. If you can, gearing up for what's to come, getting out if that's your option, and ultimately just doing what you can to keep you and your families safe. So yeah, my closing words are more true now than ever. Remember to love yourself because you are valid and deserve safety and love. Okay, bye.